All right, Charlie, welcome back here to the show. We talked not too long ago, and I'm not sure if anything else has changed there for you, but how have things been going?
Well, I've seen better days, but at least I'm home in the comfort of my safe little bubble here. So I'm about as good as I can be under the situation that's at hand. You know, the circumstances. I'm in a lot of pain lately. I I I want to go out and mow my lawn, but I don't even think I'd be able to get the goddamn lawnmower out because it's a battery operated lawnmower, and I live in I own this duplex, and I'm glad it's battery operated versus gas because I wouldn't have a shed or anything to keep it in, if I had a gas one, and if it was gas, you wouldn't want to keep that in your house. But I keep it in the basement, and the biggest disadvantage for me right now, I mean, because I move slow even to try to mow, but the biggest trouble for me, obstacle, is to get that goddamn thing out of the house and then getting it back in the house because it's not light, and I don't even think I could lift it out of the house right now. So, and I'm just I'm bummed out about it, I guess, because it's a nice sunshiny day, and I know the grass needs it, but I gotta listen to my body, I guess, because I've not been able to do a whole lot of things I'm finding, and I don't want to. I have done things that require less exertion than lifting a lawnmower, and about thought I was kicking the bucket. So that's why I know I'm not even going to try it. I mean, I figure I'm kicking the bucket anyway, but I'm not trying to accelerate it any. I'm just, 'cause that's painful, man. It hurt. It hurts under the front of my rib cage on both sides, and in my back, my lower back. I'm not sure what's wrong with it. It could be something over time that maybe a chiropractor maybe could have popped into shape or something, or it could be like a herniated or bulging disc. Or I have no idea, but that's kind of been there, and that's always been like a pain. But something in addition to that I have lately is in my back between my shoulder blades, man. There's a sharp pain that'll bring me down pretty quick. And my it's funny the discomfort in my chest because at the top of my chest, down about right here, feels like there's somebody standing on it. But then just right below it, about where my rib cage starts, it feels like there's a son bitch inside there with a garden hose or some or one big old straw ready to blow up a balloon. It feels like there's all this pressure built up, and my belly's gotten a little swollen. So I guess I'm retaining some fluid, but I'd rather be right here in the comfort of my home and have those ailments with my personal freedoms where I can get up and go to the shitter when I want. I can listen to my music if I want, have a smoke if I want, get a snack if I want, without needles and someone coming in every 4 to 5 hours and putting more needles in you or taking x-rays and all for what? To tell me I'm sick? Fuck, I know I'm sick. I don't know exactly from what because I haven't been diagnosed with anything, but it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out I'm sick. So, but I'd rather be right here and have my little bit of Tylenol and some of this fine Missouri grown tobacco right here, and that helps my pain. I wish I could still get up and do some things, and I can't. My mind is there to do it. I'm like a damn kid. I want to get up and go downstairs do some work on a project or sharpen my chisels or do something. And I can't hardly. I can, but I gotta be careful. If I'm on my feet for too long, if I'm vertical for too long, or if I don't have my legs elevated, even it makes me short of breath, and then makes, especially if I'm standing in it, and if I'm exerting myself, tends to make me lightheaded as well. I guess it's because at that position, my body's not getting the best blood flow and getting oxygen to the brain and stuff that it really needs. That's why I kind of get foggy if I'm standing up or if I'm sitting down. But if I'm like, say, like talking a lot, and if I get emotional, I've noticed it don't have to be a bad emotional. It can be a good one. But if I get excited either way, my uh, involuntarily, our what's that? Our sympathetic system or parasympathetic. Either way, the one that automatically tells your heart to beat and all that bullshit. That if something triggers me emotionally, and if that starts to happen, boy, it's fucking scary. I mean, I think it is anyway. I thought I'd be braver at this point in my life if something seemed like it was shitty, but I'm not as brave as I thought I'd be. Because I think a lot of it for me is because I'm always kind of, especially as I've gotten older, I have this outlook that it's not that life is too short. You're just dead for so fucking long. And I feel like that this is it. Once we die, that's it. It's like a bird that falls out of the tree or a dog that gets hit by a car. I mean, we're just flesh and bone, buddy. That's the way I see it. I wish more than that. I hope, I want to believe in something. I'd like to believe in something, but science and I guess logic just tells me that. And don't get me wrong, I think that the Bible and I think that as far as, historically, I know Jesus Christ was a real person, and I mean, so is the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, these were all real people, and I understand that, but I don't buy it personally. I think that the Bible is a very good, say rule book for guidance for people for life, but I don't really see it any different as I do, say, the Talmud or the Quran or any one of them other religious documents from other religions, because most of them, I think, for the most part, most of the major world religions have about the same terms of morals, I think. By about the time a guy is or girl is, 5, 6 years old, if their parents have been helping them and teaching them and being there for them, they're going to know the difference between right and wrong at that point. Now, aside from any sort of, say, you know, birth defects or some kind of genetic disposition for, a learning disability or something, most kids are going to know the difference between right and wrong. That's pretty much what any religious text is to me. Is the Bible? It's a guidance to tell you, don't kill, don't screw your neighbor's wife, yada yada yada. I mean, but you don't have to. You don't have to. I don't think believe in only Christianity with, Jesus Christ and Holy Trinity in order to have that particular view. I mean, I've got that view. I don't want to. I think murder and stuff and violence and doing someone wrong is definitely not a good thing. But I don't need to read the Bible or the Quran or anything else to tell me that. The way I see it is at this point in my life, I ought to know the difference between what is being cordial, friendly to a person, to my neighbor, or what's being a dick and uh, being with disruptive behavior and being rude. And I'm not that. I know I'm not that. I've always treated people the way I want to be treated. And whenever I worked, you know, most of my career was in the pilot house, and I mean, I was on deck in the Navy, and then when I came out on the river, but total my deck time was I guess just shy of 5 years, maybe 4 years plus. But my piloting, I mean, I was licensed and run and doing that until I was about, I mean, from the age of 22 up. So point is there were some times that, especially on the locking part of the upper, I mean, from St. Louis to St. Paul, man, it is a tricky river. You've got to pay attention, but also the deck crew, man. I mean, there's some elements up there, buddy. I mean, it can already be. You could be in the St. Louis area, for example, because we're so much further south than in the Twin Cities up there, that it could be in the 50s here, let's just say temperature wise in November, and I've gone to catch a boat and drive north in the rental car, go relieve whomever I was relieving. And by the time I'd get up there, where especially on the upper end somewhere, it'd be 20, 30 degrees, colder than what it would be here, which makes sense. But what been some times that I've stepped out on the bridge on the bridge wing, just to flick a smoke or something, and I'd go to spit, and it almost seemed like the shit would crystallize before it even hit the deck, and the cold air that can settle in quick, man. Um, and I just think it's an interesting river too to run. It was a fun river, man. But it is quite a bit. I'm not going to say more dangerous. It's all dangerous. I think that there are higher risks involved with running the for deck crew and for pilot house, in my opinion, on the locking part of the upper. You would have some guys that may disagree with me, even heavy lower toe guys of what I used to push with the 40, that they would say, "Oh, that's bullshit," the lower. But I mean, let's face it, the lower there are. I mean, yeah, you got to work. Don't get me. It's all work, but on the lower, in terms of with your toe, the companies aren't going to overload you, especially with the way things are now with the Coast Guard and with high water regulations that gets put into place as soon as river stages start jumping up and everything. They're not going to overload you. Whereas on the upper, because it is a double locking river, that the most you're going to have is 15 coming out. But you'll have those 15. Like the first boat I was the Badger, and it was a little 1950 something built St. Louis ship boat. Let me tell you, buddy, it was like I mean, for up there, it was, don't get me wrong, it was plenty of horsepower, but it was a 32, 3600, I believe. But it was an old relic, man. And the thing is that's what I first started running the upper on. I had never been on the upper, and I first started running it on that vessel. For period of time when I was getting tuned in, and there was an opening. It wasn't the Show Me State. It was the Myra Eckstein. That's what it was. The Myra Eckstein. That an opening came up on that boat. The office called me and asked me if I wanted to, make a change to go. I said, sure. It was Mark Davis. He was the port. He was the port captain at that time. Anyway, I say, Cap Mark. I said, if I don't like it, is it okay if I come back to the Badger, kind of go try it out for a trip? And this is what he said. He says, Kulage, he said, I don't think you got a problem there, buddy. He says, I don't have many people knocking on my door to ride the Badger. I said, okay, well, I meant, but I really found out more of what he meant after I rode the Myra, which was a 4200. And then about a year later, I took a front watch job on the Show Me State, which was a 5600 Dravo bobtail. Man, you get on a boat like running on the upper with 15 barges as opposed to the Badger, and it really shows you kind of how much you might have been working when when I first started. I mean, but it's not to say that I would take it back and do it a different way. I think the Badger was a good boat. I do, but Cat Mark was right, buddy. You weren't going to have many people knocking on or even willing to take a trip job on that boat. Sometimes, I mean, when they look at the rest of your fleet as a pilot, for example, and they see these 5,600 horsepower boats with spots available, pushing the same, and they're like, "Fuck you." No, I don't. Why would I want to go to the Badger? I mean, but I liked the Badger. I did, and I think a lot of that had to do with Captain Larry Thompson. He was captain on there, and he was just a swell guy, man. Really, and I learned a lot from Larry in the short amount of time I worked with him. Good guy. Anyway, he was who I called. Oh, he was actually who I called when I had to make a move and hire in with the old Mimco bunch again with Captain Jimmy Brown and Jeff Stover. And I remember Jimmy and I talking, and I said to him, I said, Cap, I said, I don't have any experience on a lower. And I said, I don't see any of your guys' boats running on the upper. And I said, I got a front watch job right now on the upper, man. I mean, no offense. I said, but I came to you a few times, Captain Jimmy, and you didn't have nothing. And now I finally got a groove going on day for day on a front watch job. Uh, and I told him, I said, it's early enough in my career and my licensing that gets stuck on an Ohio riverboat and then not ever having an opportunity to branch out from there, because that was known back then anyway, late 90s. It was known as the retirement river. It's where either a guy went because he was wanting to settle down a little, or that a guy was at because that he enjoyed, which is fine. But for me, that wouldn't have been career enhancing. I don't think, because I I think that there was a lot more business right on the Ohio. I think there's more tonnage moved. Just I mean, just from an observant point of view, just from my own observations. I could be wrong. I have no data to support this, but I think there's probably more cargo used on the Ohio, or I mean, transport boats and more pilots. But I think, in my opinion, that work in the upper is a little more challenging, I guess you'd say. As far as from a pilot's point of view, that they were, say, hurting for pilots, but their market wasn't quite as flooded as the Ohio River pilot market was. See, and so that's why I was telling Captain Jimmy Brown. I said, I'm making X amount of money per day right now, right? Which was pretty good at that time, Tim. Working day for day. But I had worked like 3 years to get to that point. I mean, I took it up the ass, man, and worked all kinds of fucked up shit for Marquette. I mean, I'm talking, 5 or 6 weeks on one boat, come home for a week, go, I ran around like a rag doll. So when I finally had this regular boat going on, man, it was a decision I had to make. Anyway, here's here's what here's what Jimmy's reply was. He kind of giggled and he said, Charlie, I know running the locking part of the upper with our boats. He said, but we do run the lower. And he said, I think you'd be good for it. You ever seen over 7 long, Cap? And I said, no, I sure haven't. He says, well, if you come over to work with us again, he said, that you learn the lower. I said, okay. I said, can I chew on that for a little bit, and think about it a night or three, and I'll call you. I'll call you either way. He said, yeah, that'd be fine. I said, okay. So one of the people I called, going back to my story, was Captain Larry on the Badger. And because he's a very skilled upper pilot, very skilled, very experienced. I mean, upper in Illinois. But he flat out told me one time, and he had been at that point in time, Captain Larry had, I want to say, 40 years maybe in the pilot house. He had started the river back in the late 60s, early 70s. So there you go, as far as the time frame. But what he told me was he had ran the lower. I want to say he said it was total for like 7 years. I believe the Jane G. Huffman 5600. Go down with 25 and then use as like a utility boat to go up the upper and whatnot with 15. It's a good versatile boat, long and stretched out, which would help on the lower. Anyway, as opposed to the bobtail Dravo. Bobtail Dravos are good just for the reason of, since you have the ass room, use it type of thing. Anyway, what he told me, and he was honest about it. He was very humble. He said I never got used to the lower, Charlie. He said I started on the Illinois and on the upper Deccan. And he said that's where I first started piloting. So when I was with the company I was with, he says when I had the opportunity, I took it to learn. He says, but I never really got comfortable. I didn't like it. He says, but if you're asking my advice would be to take the position and leave here, because you can always come back to this. He says, but with this being somewhat of a contained structure, somewhat tamed by man, with all the lock and dams and with the predictions of the rain and everything else that they've gotten down to a science. if a buoy marks a damn shoal area on the upper here now, it's going to do it, 25 years from now. With the crossings that the Corps of Engineers has made, make it navigable and all that, they you can pretty well know where your buoys are going to be and where they're going to be marked. He said, so you can always come back to this. You might like the lower, he said, but you won't know unless you try. And he goes, and here's the thing is, although I'd never liked it, he said, if something happened on the upper and say I couldn't work up there anymore, I have that at least as an option. He says, that's another thing for you. So I thought about that. And because that's another thing I failed to mention. I was going to take a cut in too, as well. So I'm getting ready to make a move to go back to the folks I worked for when I was on deck out of the military, but the pilot house instead, and they were a great company. Barge line. They were bought out by AEP, and of course AEP was bought out by ACBL. But yeah, they were a great group guys. I thought Captain Harold Dodd, Jeff, Jim and Brown. Sorry. Oh, Tim Sizemore, all them cats, good guys, good level headed and very fair, hard workers, and they expect you to work hard as well. But as long as you're trying to do the right thing, and let's say you do make a mistake, whether it be piloting or on deck, or it didn't matter, you were trying to do the right thing, man, they'd go to bat for you. And I liked that. Another thing I liked back then, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, it seems to me anyway, that there was more of it, it was very common to see Captain Harold or Jimmy or one of them come row and get on the boat, bullshit for a couple hours with the captain or whatever, kind of come out and sometimes ride even. That was kind of normal, it seemed to me, early in my career, where I didn't see as much of that later. And it could just be coincidence. I mean, I'm not implying anything, but that's a good thing especially for the pilot house people. I mean, to see that you have that sport. I mean, it's one thing you hear someone's voice on the other end of the telephone that tells you that they're gonna do something, right? And come 4 o'clock, that's someone you spoke with. If he didn't do what he said he was going to do, and he's off work because he's paid by the hour, you think he's going to stick around to what he said he's going to do? Probably not, unless you're a friend of his, or I mean, because it's time. It's knockoff ships work. It's Miller time here, about 4 o'clock type of thing, and that's lip service. That is just telling people shit that they when you work in an environment like the guys do on the boats, and it's isolated within your little community, and you look for one another as a family, so to speak, company to get on. There's a sense of pride. That you're glad that they've not just lip service, they've taken action to come out and see how things are going on the crew. Because they wouldn't always just necessarily hang out in the pilot house. I mean, there were plenty of times, even me as a deck, I remember Tim Sizemore coming out but I mean, they came out to visit, man, and break bread, And sometimes I think when you work in an industry where of your company the majority of your company, not just from an off from a public and from any sort of environment that resembles being out and be, I don't want to say the word free, to do as you please and to go where you can, to go wherever you want, you can't because of the limitations of being on a vessel. I mean, that's 24/7, you know, operation. You can't just stop at 8 o'clock, put the kickstand down because you want to go up into town. It don't work that way. And that was something else that I always appreciated, was because I hated doing it, was I don't know if they still do or not, but I think some companies are large enough that they have like an answering service where you can just call in and there will be someone who's knowledgeable enough, who's educated enough, and that can answer your question fair enough and get balls rolling for you. Let's say if you just had an incident or whatever. But point is, Tim, was that didn't always exist. And going back to a different culture, but also back to smaller companies before they were swallowed up by larger corporations, you had a more personal relationship with folks, even though the office, there was a woman that answered the phone, you know. Ow. And anyway, I think something gets lost whenever you lose that. I do. As far as when I say gets lost, I mean things that because the good old days weren't always good. But there are some things I think from tradition that if they are upheld, let's just say that there's a significance to them as long as they're applied the right way. And anyway, I think that the digital formats of a lot of things have made life grand for files and things a person needs to do, and storage for this, all on a little microchip jobber. But even with all that being developed, I I made it a point until, yeah, I guess he was probably 8 or 9 anyway, to my son, that when I was on the boat, usually about every other trip, I would I would mail him a letter, and I'd set it off with the with the with the fuel flat, and I'd put just a crisp dollar bill in there, maybe a stick of gum or something, and I'd write him a note. But I did that because even though everything was going digital and this SMS texting and all that, which is great, I think, and it's great communication, that sometimes something is lost with the personal feelings, that or the someone who's close to you and personal, that means a little bit more than what's provided on a digital format. And what I'm thinking about whenever I think about those things that made me feel good when I was smaller or younger, let's just say even as an adult, but younger, that my mom would do. She wrote me letters throughout boot camp. She found out that I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, and I was in I was there from October to February, buddy. We're talking right on, and I mean -30 wind chill. You're standing there with sickles, on your face at attention, and they yanked out my wisdom teeth. Well, when they did, I guess the inflammation and all that, and I came down with a little congestion for a couple days, but after like 3 days, which I had for 3 days, I had to be with what they call the back of the line was always called the lame and lazy chit list, shit list, or whatever, because you would see whenever you would see a company marching, and I mean, and this is for, I guess, any branch of the military, but in the Navy, you would see the company commander up front with the RPOC. Everybody's in cadence, with the height line, and I mean, looking smart, man. Got it down. And you'd see all about 70, 75 head. And then behind him, little distance back, not in cadence, on purpose, not allowed to be, trying to keep up and walk, were what they call the lazy and lame crew, because these were people that a chit is what they call, that doc would write, let's say, if you had a medical condition that was permitting you, or restricting you rather, from being on full duty. So if a guy, let's say, had a very tough manual labor job, let's just say, or like in boot camp, I'll tell you, shoveling snow. You shovel snow for fucking 4 hours, buddy. Let me tell you something. You're worn out after. You're worn out after 30 minutes. Well, shit like that, you don't do if you have a chit in your pocket. And there were some guys in some companies that you pass. And man, them motherfuckers at the end of the line, the stragglers, there was a couple faces that were always there. So I guess, that there are some people that would just abuse the medical system if they could. I was back there for 3 days because they pulled out my fucking wisdom teeth while I was awake. I mean, you talk about fuck. I mean, I thought, man, this bitch is hardcore. The dentist that was working on me, and after them 3 days, I went back into ranks. But why the fuck was I telling you? Oh, because of the cold and getting letters. My mom. I'm trying to remember exactly, because I don't remember for that boot camp occasion if it was every. I want to say it was like once a week, you know, without fail. But sometimes throughout the week she would put in other notes. But what I was going to say is once a week while I was in boot camp is when you had mail call, and that was usually on the weekend. After you had been in I guess about the third or fourth week, that's when they start kind of toning down on the asshole part, and you're more on the academic level. And on Sundays, unless the company did something to fuck up that would require otherwise, they started giving us Sundays for leisure time, even though we were in boot camp from, I want to say, I want to say it was like 10 a.m. to 1500. And that was for the guys that wanted to go to services. They provided Christian services, Jewish services, and Muslim services, I believe, all three of those at that point in time, which I didn't go to any of those. But you could, if you wanted, you could stay in the barracks and do personal things to try to, I did anyway, to try to make sure I was prepared for the upcoming stuff, whether that be study a little or make sure that double check everything to make sure my rack and everything was the way it was supposed to be, and press any clothes that I had going on, whatever, shine my shoes. But I would write letters to my mom back. They weren't like hers. I mean, I got these thick envelopes once each week where she had written me throughout the week, and she would mail them off each week, and I was so glad that she did, because while I knew I was leaving to go to the military, I mean, this was a no brainer. And I understand that because I'm the one that signed up for it, that I didn't realize the impact that it would have on me from an emotional standpoint. until I got into boot camp. Does that make sense? I didn't know it would, I thought, be a walking. I made it, but it's not a walk. I mean, you're at boot camp, you're not summer camp, So it's anyway, those letters from my mom, those handwritten letters, and at the time from my girlfriend as well, with a little spray of perfume and all that on it. That's all a guy had. We didn't have cell phones or anything. They weren't around yet. And that's all a guy had, was to be able to ride home and get letters from home. We were out to sea that I served on. I mean, choppiest seas, man. When you find out that if that chopper had mail, you'd want to bring him on in so he'd lower that fucking pallet down, man, because you wanted your mail. You're halfway around the world in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and no internet. Or I'm sure that the combat systems guys with their instruments that they had communicate, but that was all business, government, related shit. I'm talking about just to be able to get online and say, "Hey, what's going on, man?" No, there wasn't no online yet. not in the Navy I was in anyway. But anyway, that's why when my son was growing up, well, I wanted to send him a letter every now and again. I didn't do the long novellas like my mother did, but I just did just a little handwritten note, just enough to let him know that Dad was thinking about him. And like I say, I put $1 in there because I figure $1. If he don't get it, I mean, just $1. But if he does, that's a good thing for him. And then a stick of gum, because see, I don't know, I didn't smoke cigarettes throughout most of my childhood. Most of my childhood, I did not smoke. I chewed gum a lot. Yeah. And it's fun because when I did smoke, and when I was learning the upper on the Badger with Captain Larry, but it wasn't long after that I went smoke free, and I did for close to 12 years.
Charlie, you know what this is right here?
I do not. It looks like a head with 3 legs.
It's the flag of Sicily.
Flag of Sicily.
Yeah.
And you are Sicilian. No, your wife is.
I am not. Yes, correct. Angelina is Sicilian. Her great grandparents, actually, 3 of the 4 great grandparents were, I believe, from over there.
So let's see. And how old is she? About your age?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess they immigrated probably then in the early 1900s, sometime maybe in between World War I and II, maybe.
When would that have been?
I mean, depending on how quick they had children, or how young they did, rather.
I think her grandmother on her father's side was born in the early 1900s in Independence, there north of Hammond.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was 2 families on strawberry farms, and they married each other. Is how it all played out. I think she was one of 8, and the grandfather was one of 9. So they all worked the strawberry farms out there back in the 1900s, way back when. Never thought I'd say that out loud.
Hmm.
But anyway, I listened through our last recording, took all kind of notes, as you can see here.
Oh man, you've been doing a bunch
This
of work, buddy.
this is everything you covered. This is a question I have for you. This side is all questions for you.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
well, our conversation ended when the signal really kind of fell apart. The signal was not great. This seems like a better connection so far. But you had brought up, you talked for a while on it, that in the military you really look forward to mail call days, and the helicopter came in and your mother had sent you letters. I wasn't sure if there was more to that, but you also made it a point to mention that you went, I think, 12 years smoke-free and chewed a lot of gum. You were talking about sending your son letters. Do you remember
Gotcha.
the
Yeah.
thought process or on both of those points?
Yeah. 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 I do, because what I was thinking of is, I guess with technology now, and say current service members now, I'm assuming that, say even out on a ship in the middle of the South Pacific, they probably have internet, and I mean, with the capabilities we have now. Well, back in the 90s, we didn't have that. And when you'd get off the ship and you pulled into port, most most ports, it's pretty standard back then, was because all the sailors were going to run to them as soon as they got off that ship, was pay phones. You call home for, whether it be your wife or your mom and dad, whomever. And so that was our verbal communication. But as far as handwritten, my mom, growing up as a child, she would always leave like little notes, like in the morning. She would always leave like little notes in the morning of, Charlie, don't forget to do this. And, but she would always put like XOXO, hugs and kisses, love mom. Well, when I got into boot camp, into the military, that was, I mean, I had been away from home. So it wasn't my first time away. I guess it was my first time going away and knowing I was going to be away for a while, kind of, I don't know, maybe kicked out of the nest, so to speak, and flapping my wings trying to fly a little, that I didn't realize how much I would look forward to those handwritten letters when I was in boot camp. And I did. And subsequently, once I got out to the fleet, especially going over and getting deployed, we would get mail calls sometimes, depending on logistics and where we were and all that. Sometimes we'd get mail call, we'd get it again, say another 10 days later, but then you might not get it for 2 months. So it just depended on where you were, because they would have to take all your shit for, that goes to your ship if it was deployed, and it was what they call FPO, which is Fleet Post Office. And usually a chopper, if you were out to sea and they were bringing you supplies, they would have a pallet suspended down from the bird. The bird would never land; it would stay airborne the whole time. And if they could safely, if it depending on what type of aircraft it was, like the CH-46s and whatnot, I mean, they could put the pallets in the actual chopper in those cases. But in ours, it was a small ship, small flight deck. So they would hover and get above the stern of the ship, and they would slowly kind of move in, and their airmen, they would have a winch, and they'd lower it on an electric winch, power winch, and they would lower it on down to the deck. And the whole time, we've got hand signals, communications. At nighttime, we used wands, so they could see what we were saying to them. And saying all that is because I think that there was something special there when you're halfway around the world and you open up a letter, from some, I mean, from your mom or dad. It's just, it's something that for me was very beneficial for me. So when my son was young, although I wasn't, gone for 4 years or anything, I was gone a month at a time. And so what and technology evolving, and texting and face cracking and Twitter and shitter and all these other things, whatever they are, that I tried to make it a point, especially between about the ages of like 5 to about 8 or 9, I guess, once a trip, once every other trip or so. So a few times a year, I'd send him a handwritten letter that I would take my time. Say if we were stopping a fleet and the guys were out there working and I was tied off, where I could sit down and write him a quick, just even on a little notepad. Hey Charlie, here's a little piece of gum and $1, man. Hope you have a good day at school, buddy. And anyway, the gum thing. Yeah, I did quit smoking. You asked me about smoking cigarettes. I really hadn't tried to quit. I hadn't had the desire, I don't guess. When my son was born, I mean, I had smoked my whole life, but when I got off the boat and I was off for the next 27 days, 26 days, I guess you'd say technically. I know some dads, I guess, or maybe even some moms that, if given the opportunity, they'd want to pawn their child off, because I mean, they want to do things for themselves, maybe. But I didn't look at it like that. I looked at it like, man, he's only young once. And I didn't think I could have kids to begin with. I didn't think, and I thought, man. So when I got off the boat, I wanted him with me. And that meant being, like Vin Diesel, the pacifier, I mean, here I was, this tattooed dad, with whatever, and then I'd have a diaper bag on, because I still wanted to be a normal functioning person and go to Walmart, whatever guys got to do. But my boy's coming with me, type of deal. And here's what happened was I had this old piece of shit 85 Suburban. Great. I say piece of shit. It was a reliable vehicle, but it was old. It was getting rust and whatnot. But I had bought this thing on purpose because Charlie was small. Lindsay, his sister, she was still relatively small. She was 8 years older than him, but whatever. So this was a vehicle that, hey, the kids want to eat some snacks in this vehicle, go right ahead. Because up until then, I guess I was probably kind of like the Hitler daddy, I kind of had things I was used to a certain way, being that I only had to take care of myself. This was clean, that was squared away. That for me to have children incorporated into the mix, like, man, I don't want no French fry on my fucking greasy. I don't want some greasy French fry on my seat creating a little bit of a stain. So I never ate my vehicles or anything. Well, you learn as a father, you start to learn that sometimes, especially, maybe unforeseen things happen throughout a day. You might have your child out more or a little bit longer than what you wanted to. And so I would think about that and think about as soon as we get home, he's got to brush his teeth and take a shower, go to bed. So why not let him, type of thing. Well, when he was, I guess, 3, right at it, he was sitting in his car seat, and the way I had it set up in that old Suburban was I had, the big rear view mirror, and he was right in the middle, and I'd hand him whatever he needed I would keep them freezer bricks in this little collapsible cooler thing. Well, one day, out running errands of somewhere, we get back in the vehicle, and I said, "Here you go, buddy," and I gave him something to drink, but I gave him a few pretzel sticks and some carrots, them little baby carrots. Well, I'm driving down the road, man. Every once in a while, I look up in the mirror and I'm talking to him. And next thing you know, I look back there and he's got this carrot and he's got this pretzel stick and he's got the carrot up near his lips. And he's doing this with the pretzel stick. I said, what are you doing there, buddy? I'm having my smoke, Dad. And I thought, oh boy, because I did smoke and he knew I smoked. I didn't hide it, but I went outside. I didn't smoke in the house or anything. But obviously he was picking up on it. He was only 3, and here he is taking his carrot, lighting it up, acting like dad type of thing. And I thought, oh boy. Well, that was, I guess, the first time that I had really considered maybe I should stop, because his mother doesn't smoke, and I think if I don't, then maybe the chances of him not smoking are a lot better, you know. So I decided to quit. And oh boy, it's the hardest, most difficult thing that I have had to do was quit smoking cigarettes, hands down, in my life. And what I did was every time I wanted one, because I know it's probably backwards thinking, but even though I smoked on the vessel, I exercised 5 days a week. You know, I walked on the treadmill, I did push-ups and sit-ups. I never lifted weights or anything, but I liked to stay, you know, and fit, endure, you know, to wherever I could work, I could work. Anyway, anytime I wanted a cigarette, I'd drop down and do 10 push-ups. Let me tell you, 10 is not a super high number when you're used to doing them. However, when you get done doing 10, if they're proper, if you've counted them and you've done it with a breathing pattern, you may not want a cigarette right then. And here's what happened was if I did still want one, I'd do 10 more. I did it until my lungs would burn, so where I wouldn't want one. And I quit for 11 years, 11. But the thing I thought was so cool about it was this. About maybe less than a year later, we're at some family gathering somewhere for Christmas or Thanksgiving, that my older brother Spike, he lit up a cigarette out in the garage or something. And Charlie, like I said, he was maybe 4 or 5 at this point, but you know, he says, "Hey, Uncle Spike, you know, me and my dad, we quit smoking. We don't smoke anymore. That's not good for us." And I thought it was funny that he was saying this to his uncle, that me and my dad, we don't smoke anymore because that's not good for us, you know. And besides the push-ups, I had already chewed gum as just kind of a breath checker, especially if I was out like at a captain's meeting or, you know, a date with a woman, you know, whatever it might be. But I wound up having a pretty hard time there at first. And have you ever heard of Chantix?
I think so, but remind me.
Well, it came out on the market, I want to say about probably at this point close to 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. But what it was, I was at that point in time, I was still, my regular doctor was the doctor I had had as a boy. And when I got out of the military, I started going right back to him. So it was the same guy. And I told him, I said, "Doc, I quit smoking, but man," I said, "it's really hard." I said, "And man, my sometimes my nerves are shot, you know." And he told me, he says, "Hey, there's this new thing out that I can prescribe it to you." He says it's called Chantix, and he says it, and it's not like a lot of other, you know, medicines. He goes, "This goes up into your brain and it does something with the chemicals in there." He said, and what it does is it kind of, he says, the best way I know how to explain it is when a person, you know, just say in your brain that you have these connections. When a person smokes, those connections get broken, and they stay broken because of the nicotine or what have you. That whenever they don't have the nicotine, they want it. That what this medicine does, he said, is it'll kind of rewire that back to where it was, where you won't even have cravings. Wow. Okay. That shit worked for me. It did for me. But here's what happened. And man, am I glad I started it when I did, because it's at that point in time, I don't know if the medicine's still the same now or not, but then when it first came out, it was like a 4 month schedule that you kept yourself on with these pills. You know, you would titrate over a 2 or 3 week period to the full dose. And it was in 4 months. You're supposed to, anyway, it was like the 2.5, 3 month mark. I'm already at full dosage. I'm not smoking, no cravings. I catch the boat. And when you first got on the boat, or whenever I first got on the boat, the first thing I would try to do is, my first couple watches, first couple days is look back on old memos that maybe in the binder that the captain kept for any kind of changes in policies, what have you, I mean, shit happens in 30 days that you might not be aware of. And they had just sent out a memo that this medicine, this Chantix, if you're on it, you can't come to the boat with it. You can't be on it, on the boat type of deal. I was like, whoa. And I thought, And I had just gotten on the boat, but I was pretty confident at that point without having the cravings and being almost 3 months into it. I thought, man, it's no sweat off my pecker. But I will say that for anyone else that was just starting, that it sucked for them because it worked for me. It did. It worked for me. There was a bad side effect, which is very intense dreams. For me, it was. And not just, and they weren't bad dreams necessarily. They were just really vivid, you know. And it said that on the warning. That was one of the reasons why I guess that the company outlawed it and said you can't bring that to one of our vessels, because it wasn't this was not a mandated thing from the Coast Guard. This was from the company. But yeah, so how in the hell did there you have it on the thing with quitting smoking, and my mom sending me letters, me sending Charlie letters. Yeah.
Well, that leads fairly well into the first question. I'm not sure if we've covered it in any previous meetings. I think we've already recorded and published almost 10, 12 hours of content. So if I re-ask things that have
Yeah, I
previously
was going to say
been,
also, if I repeat something that has already been said, tell me to move along so I'm not boring anybody, because I don't want to say the same shit over and over.
hey, we just
But I
talking.
know I know that there's been a lot happen in the last couple months that I don't know what we've discussed on air and what we haven't. I don't know.
We got into some of it, and we'll maybe wrap on that. But let's get through my list of questions and kind of see how long
Yeah,
we've
let's do
talked,
it.
and if we find it necessary to get back into.
Oh man, that one hurt.
I
Holy
hate
Jesus.
I hate when that
Oh
happens. Yeah, indeed.
man,
Well, look,
I better just slow down on the fluffiness. I just got done shampooing this thing. It's all soft. Man, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, no, it's always good out of the shower. Tell me how your life changed when you became a father. Tell me about that experience.
To this day is the greatest day of my life. And it's funny, I guess, because how culturally, as the generations have moved on and evolved, how the father's role, parentally, has kind of went from the figure that maybe stood outside in the waiting room, just to hear if it was a boy or a girl type of deal and had a bunch of cigars, to the guy being me. I wanted to be there when that baby was born if I could, in the room with her, and they said sure. Well, man, I had some jam up insurance, and come to find out we were going to get this prime suite up in the penthouse for like 2 or 3 days. And so I said, do we really need to be there for 2 or 3 days? And the nurse says, oh honey, you're going to want it. She says, because for one thing, his mom's going to be really worn out. I mean, she's been carrying him for 9 months, so she needs a little bit of a break. But the other thing is, it's a transitional period for you guys, so that way, once you get home, you're not stumbling, wondering what to do. Because I mean, so we stayed there, and but yeah, that becoming a father for me anyway there was something. Well, I don't want to say something. I guess I can kind of pinpoint most of what it is. Is for me, a certain moral obligation automatically kind of registered that said, "Hey, you know, you've got to you've got to do the best that you can for this human being. That's your job. Anything else is secondary," type of thing. That's how I felt. I know some guys that feel different. There's this one guy I wrote with. Well, matter of fact, I'll say who it is. I don't give a shit. Kim Philip Danielson, old Captain Kim. And I worked with Kim for a while. Anyway, get back on the boat. I go up there one day, and I was having the blues already because I'm just now getting back. I got 28 days before I get off. Anyway, I go upstairs, relieve the captain one day, and he's just going on, and veins and shit bulging out of his neck and spitting while he's talking. And I said, "Captain Kim, I appreciate all that information, man, but I still got my mind on home right now." And I asked him, I said, because he's from Memphis, and his wife, I don't know if she still is. She was a nurse at the local hospital in Memphis. So between his salary and hers, I'm sure that they did, well. It's none of my business, but they have 3 children. And at one point, when I was working with Kim, he was in his early 60s then. He had all 3 kids in school, in college, at one point. Now, fortunately, I think a couple of them had either no tuition or, because of scholarship opportunity. But either way, this is the point, was he'd get off the boat, Kim would. 3 days later, you'd stop in Memphis to do tow work, and he'd be on the tug that was working you, right? Just a workhorse. Okay. If he wasn't doing that, if you called him, hey, just to say, if he was calling to check up, see where the boat is because he's catching it in a few days, you could hear this big old loud engine or something. He'd be out there farming. He's got a rice field. He'd be out there farming and running this combine and shit with his grain buddy. Well, all that being said, we're talking about a guy who probably, I don't think I'd be exaggerating when I'd say he probably spent 10 months out of the year on a boat. And then the other days he was farming or doing something type of thing. That I asked him one day, I said, "Captain Kim," I said, "you're on this boat a lot, or you're away from home a lot, and now your kids are off in college and everything." I said, "But when your kids were coming up, and to be able to, to do things like, kiss them goodnight and read them a story, tell them good morning and make them breakfast." I said, "Didn't you miss doing any of that?" Because he was in South America for a while with ACBL back when they were doing, for years. He was down there for like 5 or 6 years. That I asked him, I said, "Didn't you miss any of that?" And he sat there for just a second. He kind of thought on it and chewed on it. He goes, "No, no, I sure didn't." He said, I think my wife did a fine job. They all are all in college. One of them's going to be a preacher. One of them's this, one of them's that. He says, and they all behaved well. I didn't really think I needed to be there. I need to be out here making the money." So, and that's not to say that that's a wrong theory. That, that was his way. But it just kind of, I thought it was kind of comical in a way, but yet kind of sobering to hear someone say that, because here it is. I only just had the one, but I couldn't imagine being on a boat on my days off and not being with him unless it was something that was necessary. For food or for medical supplies or something. That shit's hit the fan. Dad'll be out there working, no questions asked. But if I don't need to be, if I can just kind of tighten up the belt a little bit, trim off the fat in a few ways financially, I'd rather be at home. But that's what fatherhood meant to me, and still does. But that's what it meant to me when he was born, was until I felt like that he had been kind of guided and coached enough that it was my responsibility to see after him, and I'm glad that I was able to. And I don't know about, I don't know, they talk about synchronicities, these people with vibrations and all the different mental things and how, but I uh I think it is a little odd that when Charlie started to drive himself to school when he was 16, obviously he had to wait, but when he started doing that around that same time frame, shortly thereafter, actually, when he is when I had the motorcycle wreck in 2019 that that my addiction it became the master. It was in control of me, and I was no longer in control, type of thing. And when I look back now, just kind of makes me wonder. I say, well, was that coincidence, or was it some weird psychological subconscious kind of dealing that, because I know that I don't have to get up now in the mornings and I don't have to make sure I'm there at 3 in the afternoon to pick him up, then, and don't get me wrong, it's not something that, I was depressed about, but it was a change. It was something different. And I don't know. But either way, after that motorcycle wreck, for sure. And at that point, he was a junior in the 11th grade. So, but that is when my addiction started kind of getting to the point where I don't feel like, since then, I don't feel like I've been an adequate father since then. And so I'm grateful, at least instead of looking at it like that, I'd rather look at it like, you know, from the time he was born until 16 or 17, I really did the best I could. And I'm really proud of him too, because he's a great guy. And to me, that's what matters. I mean, I used to think, a matter of fact, I went my whole life thinking that what mattered was my job and what I was able to afford with my job and the stability that I had and all that other shit. And yeah, I guess a person needs that, because I mean, I'm about to get fucked now, but in the bigger scheme of things, I don't care if my son ever steps foot in a school again, or if he goes to school for the next 12 years and becomes some damn lawyer or something, winds up on Capitol Hill. I don't know. I just want him to be happy, and and to look at what's happening with me, because I spoke with Charlie about this just last week. Actually, I told him that I was, sorry for turning out this way, and I didn't ever mean to cause embarrassment or anything to him or the family. But but I told him, I said, if I needed to say that, Charlie, I said, because I've tried to always be a good father, and I've tried to always better myself. And I don't think it'd be I don't think that it would be being a good dad if I didn't tell you how difficult this period of time is for me in my life, that I can only hope that you can see and learn from my mistakes. You're going to make your own mistakes. I told him, I said, you're going to fuck up. I mean, it's not a matter of when, just a question of, or excuse me, if, just a matter of when, or a question of when, because it's going to happen. But, and I'll be right there to do whatever I can to help him. But this particular deal with coping with drugs is not the answer. And they teach now in, the, I guess you'd say, the psychological world, mental health world, Oh, it's not your fault. You couldn't help it. It's what they say to me. It, if they're trying to make me feel better because they're not belittling me, I appreciate that part of it, because there is a stigma attached to being a drug addict for sure. And I have experienced it. So I would much rather that, but it, I still believe that to a point, hey, no one, I mean, it's my fucking fault. No one ever forced me to do anything for the coping part. I mean, I did that knowingly, but it was for coping. It was for trying to regulate my sleep and all kinds of things because of up here. I mean, if you're not resting and I mean and getting quality rest to let your body try to heal in your mind after long days, and you're getting at the most 4 or 5 hours and it's fragmented, that ain't worth a fuck, man, after a while. And that's what I got tired of, because I knew that going off of that kind of sleep deprivation, it was a matter of time before I had an accident, man. Matter of time. And everyone has accidents, don't get me wrong. All pilots are going to have them, no matter how minor or large, you're going to have them. But I'd like to think that no one has them purposely. They're accidents. That's why it's called an accident. But I think if a person knows that they're not on their sharpest day, that they're not as healthy as they could or should be, I think that they need to address it, because only you know that within yourself, you know. So if I would have had an accident with illegal dope in my system, it doesn't matter if we would have had a mechanical failure and had a rudder fall off while I'm making a Vicksburg bridge or something. It wouldn't matter. If they find your piss is dirty, and if someone gets hurt beyond first aid, has to get off the boat, you're going to get piss tested. And if they get hurt, doesn't matter if you had a mechanical failure or not, you're going to go to prison, buddy, federal prison, because I mean that's messing with other people's lives, But I guess I was trying to, I guess you'd say they call it coping skills. I guess I was trying to cope, but it was with the wrong things, and I knew that, and that's why I'm glad I resigned when I did. That's one of the better decisions that I think I've made in probably the last 10 years, was resigning. It's bittersweet because I worked my ass off to get to the point of where I did, but it's funny, people say that with drugs, you lose your wife, you lose your house, you lose your job, but we will I'm convinced that being an addict, that you don't lose it, you give it away. You wind up choosing dope over your wife and over your home and over your job. And you don't realize it I didn't realize it at the time. I really didn't. I mean, I know that probably sounds like I'm a damn idiot, but my thought process was, take about 4, 5, 6 months off, Charlie. You've never had a break in your entire life. You know, I mean, since day one, why not take a break? You got some money tucked away. And I thought about it. I thought, why not? Go out and or stay at home, do something, but separate myself from the river for half a year or something, maybe recharge my batteries, and then get on back to work and start tripping somewhere or something. That was my plan. 6 months turned into 9 months, and I'm kind of like, ooh. Next thing you know, it's a year. I think, okay, I'm still good. I got plenty of time. I'm good. License still good for another couple of years. Man, I'm great. But when a person needs help, like I have needed it, and and you don't seek it due to your job, which I didn't, due to my job, it 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 makes, I think, I don't know if symptoms is the right word or not, frame of mind, but it makes shit a lot worse because having that on your mind all the time, it's difficult, man. I mean, I'm I'm in a very difficult place in life because, and I guess it's why the stigma does bother me as much as it does, because especially from like healthcare people, to indicate they are better than me, or they don't, oh, how could you do this or whatever, just because I'm a drug addict type of thing. It makes you feel like shit. And I don't know if those people, when they do that, if they realize that I'm living this life, if anyone's disappointed in me, it's me. I know that I've fucked up. I know what has to be done, so to speak. But as I went further along, where maybe at first I had, you know, quite a few options, possibly, as time went along, those options, they go by. You only got a couple left. And if you haven't been in that situation, you don't know what to do. Or in my case, I say, I thought I knew what to do, but obviously I've not made the best fucking choices, because if I did, I wouldn't be in this predicament. So that's when I've turned to like Dan, my therapist. Dan's even keeled, good guy, straight shooter. He's not going to tell me what I want to hear. He's going to tell me the truth. That's what I want. I don't want someone who's going to blow smoke up my ass. I want someone who's going to tell me what's going on. And that leads me to say that I got my name on a waiting list with the VA for inpatient rehabilitation. But more importantly, because where I'm at, and this is a major metropolitan city, St. Louis is, but where I'm at, they have inpatient program, outpatient program, detox for opioids, detox for alcohol, and there's really no in between. So I asked my doc. Well, my doc asked me. He says, um, "How's it going with the use?" I said, "Same as always, but I have been every day. I try a little more harm reduction, doc, which is what I'm trying to do." And I told him what I'm doing, which is I'm trying to regulate my sleep a little bit, where I go to bed at night and I get up in the morning, normal times. But anyway, he said, "So it's daily use?" I said, "Yes, sir. Yeah, sure is." He said, "Any plans on stopping?" I said, "Not really. I mean, if you," I said, "I'm open to suggestions." I said, "I'm gonna tell you what my problem is, doc, and maybe you can help me." I said, "I want to go to the program, at the VA program, inpatient, 3 weeks long. But to my knowledge, that program, once you step foot in there, and of course, it is, I mean, you can't leave, you're volunteering to go in there, but it's not like a controlled, against your will type of thing. You can go out and have a smoke at lunch and, whatever. But they are long days of education, group therapy, and things of that nature. From the information I've received, which is a pretty reliable source, he works there at the Jefferson Barracks facility. He said, "Charlie, before you come into this particular inpatient program, you would want to be able to be in a little bit better health, buddy." He says, "Because you'll be sleeping in the barracks. You got to get up in the morning and go over to the chow hall. You got to walk outside to do that. You got to walk to your first class or you know, you got to be able to get around. And right now I'm not. So going back to this, I asked the doc, I said, so doc, here's my problem is I said, I can detox at home. I've tried detoxing at home on my own. It just doesn't work because after about the first 36 to 48 hours, my body just it just becomes in so much pain and shuts down that to even get up just to get something to drink is a chore, right? Type of thing. So I told him how last year I was successful for 3 months when my son's mother stayed with me because she did, man, she picked up a lot of slack, dude. She did all the dishes and helped me out, you know, so I could stay clean. And I did while she was there. So I told him, I said, my idea is because she's not here, and I'm not going to say impossible, but the likelihood of it happening alone is not there, that I got to go somewhere and detox, doc, because not just because of medical intervention, just because of little things like being able to get up and get something to drink, you know, or whatever. If, you know, I need to be able to do this in an environment where I can just get rest or what have you. So I asked him, I said, so here's my question to you, doc. I said, if they expect people to go to this inpatient program for 3 weeks, ready to go 10, 12 hours a day, then they've already detoxed somewhere. I mean, because to be able to function and do that after you've been a chronic user, misuser, abuser, whatever you want to call it for the last half decade, it's not, you know, you can't do that. Where does a veteran go if you don't have detox at the inpatient? He said, go to the emergency room. I said, no, sir, I'd rather not. The last time I did that, they wheeled me off and separated me from my son, unbeknownst to me. I guess because I was a big threat in a wheelchair, you know. But then once they got me in to the locked place, still wouldn't tell me what's going on. Yeah, I was feeling a little, I never felt unsafe. I never felt unsafe, but I was being held against my will and I knew something was happening. And because I still am of competent mind and I can make my own fucking decisions, they had by law 3 hours to tell me and they didn't. They should have. So me going to the ER and asking for help for withdrawals, I think not. So much to my surprise, a couple hours later, somewhere near the evening, actually, because I didn't expect it to be, you know, VA is government, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., buddy. And 4 p.m., it's knock off shifts work. I mean, it's Miller time. About 5:30 in the evening, my phone rang and it was my VA doc, my psychiatrist. And he said, hey, man, I got some news. If you're interested, I'm going to share it with you and see what you think. I said, great. He said, they, because they got it down, I guess, to a science on the methadone clinic for the opioids and fentanyl and all that, and then for alcohol, but and benzodiazepines. But anyway, he said, I spoke with him with a with a caseworker, social worker about your issue, and which I wound up reading his notes, and what he actually put on the notes initially were veteran needs help detoxing if possible. We'll get you community care, by the way, is in the VA sense is anything that's not VA. So say if there's a local hospital right here, you know, trauma unit 1, 2 level hospital, that if they have like say a detox, and you know that he was going to look into that, right, that he put on his notes. Well, he got in touch with his social worker. He called me, and what he said was he said it wouldn't be any time real soon, but if you want help with detox, that you can put your name on a list, and they said that they're willing to work with you, that they don't have much, I don't guess, much experience or veterans and clientele with its particular issues that I have, but that they were willing to work with me on detoxing from it. And he said, "Do you want to put your name on the list?" I said, "Well, hell yes, doc. I mean, that's a step in a different direction of something. Because if I do nothing, Tim, then nothing's going to change. And right now, buddy, I'm in a lot of pain every day. I'm in a lot of pain, both emotionally and physically. But my I'm going on and on. I got to get something to drink. But my my son, he drove me to the Veterans Hospital on Sunday, and eh, got those results, I guess, Tuesday or Wednesday on the computer. Because see, I don't have a primary doctor yet. I need to get one, because even the emergency room doctor said, he goes, "Man, you got a lot of little things going on that you need. You got a complex kind of case going on with all these different things." He goes, because really what he was looking for, Tim, this doctor on Sunday, was being in the ER. He's looking for something life threatening, like, and he said, right now, you're not having congestive heart failure, which was a good thing to hear, because I didn't know what was going on, man. I'm having these, it's been about, I guess at this point now, probably close to 2 weeks, that something happened a couple weeks ago, and I don't know when, or I can't pin, or maybe it was something that just kind of gradually happened, and I'm just, that to physically move and to get up and to walk, severely limited as to what I was able to do before that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was progressively getting a decline of health. I'll admit that. But like, for example, to take my lawnmower and to push it one goddamn row, you know, normally not a big deal. The last time I mowed, pardon me, I started off like normal, I guess you'd say, stride or pace. Within 5, 10 steps, it starts slowing down, slower and slower. That before you know it, I look like one of them mummies or something off of one of the old 1950s black and white movies that's moving like a robot. And my only relief of not being totally embarrassed in front of the whole block is because I'm holding on to my lawnmower thinking that they don't notice something's wrong, because if I don't have that thing to hold on to, man, for me to maintain a steady gait and pace, out of the question. Even when Charlie and I got to the hospital, which he drove, we were we were one block away, and about halfway there, I mean, is when I guess he really noticed it for the first time, that my pace from the time we left the car, just, and it doesn't take long, within about 3 or 4 minutes, because in my mind I say, "Oh yeah, let's go, let's do it," type of deal, or whatever it is I'm doing. But once I get up, my body reminds me, "Hey, son bitch, hello, we ain't feeling right today." And man, it's scary, man, because these chest pains, these arrhythmias, combined with the other things. But hey, I'm not going to complain about them, because I have no one to blame but me. It's self-inflicted. So, but the EKG showed, it said abnormal, and then it said possible left atrial enlargement. And then after that, it says, and I've never heard of this, I had to look it up, and once I did, I was sorry I did. It's called Brugada syndrome. I have type 1, Brugada, Brugada syndrome. So I've got that, and they also found in an X-rays in my lungs that on the left side, in the bottom of the lung, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's spelled Atelectasis. And basically, what it is, it's an area of the lung that the I think they're called alveoles or something, but they're the little pockets that hold your air, your air that allows you to get air, are clogged either by blood clot, mucus, what have you, that because of that, of the blockage, I guess you'd say, that over time, if it's not tended to, in my case, I guess, what can happen, and it hasn't yet, as far as I know, but what can happen is wherever it's kind of blocked up and 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 not allowing that passage, it's doing a couple of things. One, it's not wherever, and I'm going to call it scarring, fibrosis. Let's just call it that. But it's an area in the bottom of my left lung that, for whatever reason, have these collapsed lung things, these little air pockets, and they're kind of scarred. So I don't see that coming back on its own and getting full recovery in terms of the scar tissue. But to my knowledge, if I was brave enough, they could do some kind of little surgery deal where they go in there and find out where the blockage is. Oh, no, no surgery, Bobby, not for me. But um, the um, the second thing, and it makes sense, is that wherever it's scarred, it's that much less area that your blood is able to pass to bring oxygen to the rest of your body, to those organs that are, near. So that leads to depletion of oxygen to all the organs, your brain, your spleen, the whole works. So for me, like there's most ailments, I think, or most, I guess you'd say, issues in my life. The answer used to be, man, have some chicken soup for a couple of days, but after, try to get moving again, exercise. That'll be the key to a quick recovery. And usually it is for most things. For this, it's just the opposite. The doc put on the orders, on discharge orders. Don't overexert yourself. If you got something at home that needs help with, either don't do it or get help. Because for me, whenever I get up and move around, obviously my heart's working harder, right? But that scar tissue is still there. It's not letting the blood flow any faster. So all of that, and it's a matter of minutes if I'm doing anything that has exertion, matter of minutes before I'm lightheaded because I don't have enough oxygen getting to my goddamn brain. And I start getting a little dizzy and kind of foggy, man. I go back to my recliner and I lay her back and put my legs up. So, but those are the two things that he found to rule out congestive heart failure for that day, because I've been having edema in my lower extremities, buildup of fluid, and chest pains, and pains just right underneath where my titties are, man. Like on my chest itself, above my titties, if it's crushing. It's tight in the past 2 weeks. It's a tightness that doesn't go away. It's just always kind of there. But then right underneath where that tightness is, It's just the opposite. It feels like someone's trying to blow up my belly or something with a damn straw because there's so much pressure in there, or something. And maybe where those two areas meet, I don't know, but man, I get these sharp pains and in that area up underneath my ribs, and I'm like, man. Next thing that you know, and that'll kind of buckle me forward. Next thing that you know, I get this one in my back, and man, that one in my back, buddy. Oh, it's like almost about right in between my shoulder blades, and it's enough to make you want to cry. The other night, I just remembered this. Huh. The other night, I did something I hadn't done before. I was in my kitchen. I was just trying to cook for myself, and the pain was so bad. I cried out mercy. I said, if there is a God, I call mercy, please. Right now, I said, I'm done. I'm cooked. Stick a fork in me. I'm tired. You've won. I surrender. Here's my white flag. Nothing. But that's how the pain gets. So if it wasn't for my little bit of Tylenol and Excedrin and my marijuana, I wouldn't have anything for that kind of pain. And I'm glad I got some good marijuana edibles the other day with my son. He drove me because he took me to the hospital. And for the longest time here in Missouri, I don't know what it's like. I don't even know the laws in Louisiana, but here in Missouri, for the longest time, when they first kind of opened the dispensaries, you'd see a bunch of these little 100 milligram, say, tins of gummies or some kind of candy or something that would come out to the whole container being like 100 milligrams. So say 10 pieces of gummies at 10 milligrams a piece. It doesn't touch it for me personally. That ones I got right now are 200 milligrams a piece, right? So what used to just be in one container in 10 pieces, I've got a 2,000 milligram bag right now. And what I do is each one is 200 milligrams. I just about halfway through the day, I take a bite off of it. The other half I'll take 12 hours later or so. And that helps a lot with the pain. So I'm just hoping, I say hoping, I guess that maybe where I think that this direction could go is VA calls me and says that, hey, your name's been on a list. Are you ready? And I say, yeah. And they take me and let me detox. And then after, go to their residential facility, you know, which I think would be great because I was impressed with just their virtual on the computer with the therapies and the trainings that they did. I'd be excited to do it in person because I was learning so much, Tim. So many things that I feel like I should have already known, but I didn't. I mean, little things like signs of an unhealthy relationship, signs that someone is toxic or that you are, type of thing. These are all new things to me. And but I'm interested to learn about them because obviously I've got some issues going on that I still don't have answers to personally, me. That's what I'm searching for. I'm still searching for some answers. And unfortunately, about the mercy thing the other night, this is this is how I feel as of today, August 31st, 2024, is I think what separates me from people that have had successful recoveries, whatever their substance or whatever their addiction is this is my opinion. They have the missing ingredient is spirituality. I don't believe in anything, and I wish I did because whenever I listen to, say, like a podcast or I read a blog about someone who's recovered, somewhere there's always something about the Lord, Jesus Christ, or the universe, or Allah, or the Quran, the Talmud, something that, or Zen, with Buddha and Eastern, Chinese type of religions. Those are really big in the recovery community. I've even explored in that area, just trying to find something that maybe hey, that sounds good enough. I can believe in that. And I just haven't. But I want to, because without that, and maybe I'm alone, I don't know. But without that fulfillment of believing in that there's something after this, it sucks. To me, it does. There's some people that are atheists that would say, "Oh no, why does it suck? There is no God." Well, I don't know if there's one or not, right? I mean, that's the way I feel. I can't say there's not one. I can't say there is one. I don't know. So that puts me in the kind of the agnostic category, I would think, you know. But even if it's got something to do with just the goddamn, they talk about the universe and energy, and how when we die, if we're energy when we're alive, then energy doesn't die. Where does it go? Okay, well, I don't know, but I know that I'm going into a pine box 6 feet down, you know. So if there's something beyond that, that's what I'm looking for now, while I still have a pulse and I still have air in my lungs. Whether I'll find it or not, I don't know.
Well, Charlie, I'm very glad to hear that at least now you seem to be looking at the potential for detox and recovery in a different light than our previous conversations. Um,
If I live that long,
yeah,
because I don't know what's happened to me, Timmy, in the last 2 months, or excuse me, the last 2 weeks, relatively short, but I don't know. I don't know how much more of this. I don't know how much more of this I can take, man. So if the answer is in detox, let's say hypothetically that I'm detoxing and they find something that explains, or great. But when Charlie and I, my son and I, when we left the hospital on Sunday, and not to say that I should have been walking on water, but I wasn't any better, and I really wasn't any further along for the pain part, and knowing what I can do to try to manage it, type of thing. That I can only hope that if I get clean and my body's still going haywire, that there's someone there with a stethoscope and some kind of knowledge to give me a hand to figure out what it is that I have or do not have, and is it going to kill me or not? So I know whether or not, to kind of make plans on what's going on here.
well, I've got a few more points in regard to a lot of what you were just saying, but
30 years
uh,
almost, Tim. I don't mean to cut you off, but you see that? My
yeah,
big brother got me for that when I was in the Navy almost 30 years ago at Zippo Lighter.
I'm not sure I've been able to keep anything for 30 years.
But I didn't use it for 11.
Roger that. Well, you mentioned earlier, kind of in passing, that you feel that you've not been the best father you could be since 2019, since that turning point. But you also said that the primary point of your life is to ensure that your son is happy, is successful, is living his life in his way. Conversations we've had, I'm not sure if you recorded any of it, but certainly on the telephone, it sounds like your son is in a pretty good spot to be happy and to live that good life that you're hoping he gets.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
Is
And see, and why I mentioned that earlier is because, like, for example, some of my people I've known a long time, let's just say if their children are maybe the same age as Charlie, and they might be off at the university of this or in the military doing it or whatever, I'm happy for that. I am. But like with Charlie, I don't I don't really ask him what his future plans are, what his goals are, because if he's anything the way I was and he's cut from my cloth, I always had goals. I was never bored. So, I mean, I always had something in my mind, long and short term, that I was working myself toward. That whether he's working at Target or working at a gas station or, like I said earlier, at a law firm, if he can go to bed at night relatively easy and rest well, and he's got a great wife, that's what I care about. Whatever he does for work and whatever he does to be able to afford things that he wants to do, great. But that's not Charlie's a great guy, but it took me almost a lifetime, it seems like, to figure that out about myself. That because I really did. I thought that the way of life was work your ass off, get what you can, and whatever a person has, material wise, car, boat, jet ski, whatever, house, to me, that kind of reflected that person. But I've learned in these last 5, 6 years that that's not what society wants you to do. Society wants you to say, hey, be happy, don't necessarily conform, and it's okay to be nonlinear sometimes. And and I'm accepting that now, but I didn't used to. I was I'm not going to say I was a prick. I would always like to think I was a decent person in terms of being whether a supervisor or a dad. I didn't ever want to rule with an iron fist. I didn't want to be a tyrannical type of person. I wanted to be someone that was approachable, someone to get along with, and someone that would never ask someone to do something that I haven't done or that I wouldn't do. I'm not going to, and that was successful for me throughout my time. But now I don't even think about those things anymore. I don't even think about, I think about daily the struggle for me. And maybe that's selfish, or maybe that's because I didn't for so long, of why now it feels like it's crashing down on me, is because I didn't really, I mean, I took time for me, don't get me wrong. But here's a good way of explaining it. I've slept in my life for the last 30 years, I guess, but I haven't really rested. Does that make sense? Because to me, being raised, especially by kind of two alpha males, in business for themselves, hardworking guys that, you're not gonna get food and the money that you need by sitting on your fat ass on a Tuesday eating chocolate, watching TV. It's not gonna happen. But I thought that that's what I had to do to be a decent person all the time. And I'm kind of convinced, man, especially the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 thing that most people did, especially when I was a child, like in the factories and whatnot, back in the 70s and 80s, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. I'm talking work. I don't mean just, a little, oh, and then 2 hours later go out and have a smoke. No, I mean these guys worked, man. And they worked their whole lives, hopefully live until they're 62-ish, get a little sense of retirement, and hope to live it out at least till they're 70. That was kind of the outlook when I was a child. It seemed like that way of life and that mentality, and not to say it's bad or anything, but that is conforming. That's saying, oh, because science says we should break our 24 hours a day into 3 different sections of 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of play type of thing. Okay, so society says it, and so do magazines from medical journals. Fine. But to me, I would rather work less and make as much profit as I can, live within my means, where at the end of my day, I'm not sitting there thinking about what a grind it's going to be the next day or the next day where maybe I can take a little time and take a break. If I would have done that earlier on in my life, maybe I wouldn't have gotten burnt out, but maybe I wouldn't have been successful with anything either, Tim. I mean, because you got to, you know what it's like. I think that you do. I mean, you got to be hungry to want something, you know. And for being a guy who did not have a high school diploma, who subsequently got kicked out of the Navy, I mean, here I was, 21 years old. I was lost because I thought, what am I going to do? You can't even get a government job with the discharge I've got. You can't do none of that. You can't get a job with your local utilities usually. So me going to work on the river and the irony of getting a license that's administered by the federal government and holding that license for 25 years, I feel pretty good about, you know. So I guess rather than looking at what I've given away or lost and is no longer here, I guess instead of flipping the coin and trying to look at the bright side, is I had 25 pretty good years of doing the right thing that I'm glad, if for anyone, for my son. And I know it might sound shitty because I don't really care much about me at this point, but that's and if that's what it takes. I told my therapist this the other day, Dan. I said, Dan, I'm gonna be honest with you, buddy. Just me, I don't give a shit no more. I gave up hope a long time ago. But for my son, who I hope one day is a father himself, if that's what he wants, how can I show him a good example of how to be if I'm not doing it? And to me, to just be sitting by idle right now and not attempt to do anything and nothing change, that wouldn't be the right thing because I'm not in a good place in life. So they say, you've got to get sober for yourself and you got to do it for you. Okay, fine. But if it takes my son being the catalyst for me, I'm going to do it that way because I got to do something different, man. This is not, this is, this is not working for me anymore.
Well, I am incalculably happy to hear that you're considering this program for your
No,
son,
yeah,
if
I've got
nothing
my name
else.
on the list. I've got my name on the list.
Well, you mentioned earlier on our phone call that you had some good news and some bad news. I think you've shared some of each, but I think you touched on it in this conversation, but I'm not sure you followed up. There's another offer from the VA that you were telling me about earlier.
Okay. No, that is the offer, but there's another thing going on. So and this is regarding my claim. When you file a claim with the VA, you're and like in my case, I'm claiming PTSD that is service connected because of the helicopter crash. That it could be someone, let's say physically, who has a leg blown off or whatever. That when you file the claim, the first thing that they do is kind of all of the preliminary, getting your service records and collecting all. And in some cases, the way I understand it, some very few, they do what's called an ACE or something. Anyway, they're able to take the evidence from your file and what you've sent in and say, yes, we are going to approve your claim with what we have. Here you go, type of thing. That's rare. What they normally do is they order what they call a compensation and pension exam, a CNP exam. And that's the next step in this process for me because they need more evidence. And the evidence basically is they've gotten everything from me now. They've got a third party vendor because the VA does not do this. The VA doctors and stuff do not do these exams. They used to. Now it's just strictly third party. So they got a hold they got a hold of me last week. The company did. They're from the other side of the state of Missouri. And at first I was really nervous because I thought, man, Joplin, Missouri. I mean, I'm in St. Louis. It's like a 4-hour drive from here. My CNP exam on Friday is virtually right here at home. But but that is for the mental health for PTSD. The doctor on the other end is going to be a woman, and she is a special. They have to be a specialist with certain claims. So for PTSD, you have to have a psychiatrist or psychologist with a PhD, basically, and they're not there like a normal doctor to diagnose you and to ask you what your symptoms are and to give you referrals. They are there for the VA to examine and see if what you claim is going on is going on. I've heard where the PTSD exam can last anywhere from an hour to a couple of hours. And then once you're done, the doctor does the report and sends it off to the VA. Then the VA, from that, they'll make a decision. Either do we move forward and decide what we're going to do with this claim, approve it or not, or do they still need more evidence? Like in my case, although my lungs and heart and all this other shit, I'm not claiming, they still might want to have me go to a regular MD to run tests because they don't have much on file for me. I've only been dealing with the VA since April. So what they want to make sure of is if I do have other conditions, okay, well, let's find out what they are and are they service connected or not, because that will determine if I have to pay towards treatment for those things. And so that happens on Friday, this exam. I think it's great news. Something has got me just a little on edge, and I'll wait until Tuesday to call because of the weekend, but the holiday weekend. But when the lady asked me on the phone from this third party vendor working for the VA, she says, "What's your schedule like in the next 30 days? Do you work?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." I said, "So I'm, you know." She goes, "So then you could do like a short notice, like 24 to 48-hour notice on doing another exam if we order it." I said, "Why not? I might have to take an Uber or something, but why not?" Well, after we spoke is when I spoke with my doc, and I didn't want to pass up the chance of putting my name on this waiting list for treatment. So, but the doc and I just kind of just thinking out loud, both of us kind of echoed one another and said, well, maybe the timing will work out good that the CMP stuff will get all done. And then there'll be a spot open at the detox center. Because I'm going to call Tuesday and let them know that I have put my name on it. Because if you miss one of these exams, Tim, if you don't have a real good reason, your claim is pretty much going to get denied. I mean, you have to be at that exam, and I've confirmed I'm going to be. So on Tuesday morning, I'm going to call and just say, hey, just throw a bug in your ear. This is what happened because I do want the treatment if I can get it. Because for me to go somewhere here in town, man, I wouldn't be able to pay for that. I wouldn't have it. I mean, I would, but then I'd be out of the house because what little bit I've got left is not going to last. And the VA, I still might have to pay for some things, but it's a much lower rate. And I don't have monthly premiums. That's a great deal. But yeah, I figure I gotta, even though I've lost hope, I gotta find a thread of some kind of something somewhere to try to be the best example I still can be for Charlie. And I'm not real hopeful, but I'm going through the motions. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to not be hopeful and do nothing. If you do nothing, nothing will change. You got to do something. And I'm in a miserable place in life. I am. I'm in a miserable place in life with myself. When you when you really dislike yourself because of decisions that you've let yourself make and things that you let go, it's a whole nother kind of darkness you can't imagine. It's a difficult place to be in, man.
Well, I'm glad to
And
hear again that I'm sorry, go ahead.
and when you're feeling that way, going back to almost 2 months ago now, when you're feeling the way I do, and then you go to a hospital thinking that you're going to get medical care and get help, but instead you get wheeled off and not told what the fuck's going on and get locked up in a psychiatric ward. Like, whoa, where did this come from? That kind of drives your little bit of hope even further in the ground. You know, it destroys any kind of hope you had. You know, and I guess what bothers me more than anything, Tim, about some folks and the way that they've handled my addiction, I understand that it's a taboo thing and it's not good, it's not healthy. I understand all that. But I've been honest and forthright with any medical staff that I've had interaction with because I think that they should know that hey, by the way, I'm an addict, so that they know and they're aware so they don't give me something that, whatever. I've been honest with the doc. Anytime he's asked me, he's not piss testing me. I could say, oh, yeah, I'm clean, doc, but I'm not going to do that. That's not being a man of my word. So all I ask for in return is the same thing. Be honest with me and tell me what's going to happen instead of wheeling me off in secret like I'm some big, you know, anti-American bomber or something, and you got to lock me up and throw away the key. I mean, come on, man. I mean, give me a sit down like a normal man, and not put me in a goddamn paper pair of underwear with a plastic spoon for 5 fucking days. You know, I'm not saying that that's not needed for some folks, man. There are a lot of people that are really sick that need that because they're going to hurt themselves. I get that. But when you feel that way that I'm telling you about, Tim, and then you get treated with no dignity, you don't feel like there's any respect for you at all, that hurts, man. Even though I realize being addicted is not, you know, a glamorous thing, it don't mean that you got to treat me like shit, you know. And that's what kind of happened. And I don't feel like I deserve that, man, because but the other part of me says, hey, I don't blame the medical staff. I mean, who knows what they come across every day? I mean, they're in an emergency room in the inner city of St. Louis. They probably get all kinds of weird shit where here it is that they know there's a guy coming in who's an addict, who's almost 50. He's white, he's bald, got a big beard. For all they know, I'm coming in there with a rage or something. So they're on guard, and I don't blame them. I think I would be too. I mean, that's their safety. My only complaint is okay, once you see that I'm not that guy and I'm not that monster and I still have all my teeth and I'm not going to punch anybody, then can you at least give me the time of day and tell me what's going on? And they didn't. So that's why up until this past Sunday with my son, I hadn't been back to any medical facility because where's the trust, man? If I'm gonna be truthful with them, they can be truthful with me. And they weren't. And that just kind of compiles on it.
Well, I know after that experience, any kind of glimmer of hope for help was gone for you. And I'm glad, at least now, that you are going through the motions, maybe to recover, to have a better life, to be with yourself
Right. Yeah. Not just
more
to
time.
recover off of the dope, but I mean to also to try to get what they call specialized therapies for some different things that I'm dealing with that I haven't my whole life. I mean, I was a pretty normal guy, but now I can't go back to work on the river. I'm not skilled or trained or educated formally on paper to do anything else for anybody. And I'm going to have certain disabilities physically and probably mentally where I can't just go anywhere. So if they've got some stuff at VA to help me out with that, that would be great for me because I don't know where to start, man. You know?
Well, the point I was alluding to earlier, I'm not sure if you did cover it or not, but on the phone earlier today with me, you mentioned that there's a potential for a service animal.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. And it would be for me, it would be an emotional support animal. I had to look up. There's like different terminology. There's therapy dogs, which come to find out a therapy dog is like what Dan has, my therapist, where he brings a dog into his office, and the dog is there for the patients, for therapy. Then you have service dogs. Service dogs, I guess you'd say, with the ADA, the American Disabilities, thing that they are American Disabilities Act, that they're entitled to go with that person anywhere for blindness and what have you. Well, there's also emotional support dogs for PTSD, and I didn't know that. And I was on the phone with my doctor, my psychiatrist, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it was about the 15th, I guess, of August, give or take. That he asked me, he goes, how are you feeling, this and that or something or another, and I mentioned it. And anyway, I was trying to think of something in a good positive way of a change. And I told him, I said, doc, I've never had an animal. I'm thinking about maybe getting me a damn puppy or something, something to, I said, especially obviously all the human women, especially that I've had in my life, they're not here anymore, so I must say something that drives them away. If this dog don't know English, I'm gonna be good to go. And then, to my surprise, he turned around and said, "Well, I'll have Amy call you." I said, "Really?" Amy is his nurse. I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We've got some resources. We can try to help you out with that." I didn't know that. I wasn't implicating anything when I told him. I was just telling him just the bullshit. But Amy called me the next day, and while we were on the phone, she explained a few things to me in general, and then sent me some websites. These particular organizations train dogs, and I think that it's all on donations. I know that, so probably nonprofit type of deal where um, you fill out an application, and what your ailments, your disabilities are, your emotional needs, whatever. The VA fills out a part, and then you send it off. And if you're approved, then they decide what kind of dog, I guess, what breed would be best for that veteran, what size, and all that shit. And then a dog somewhere has a litter of pups. They pick one out for me. They train it to a certain point, and then they bring the veteran in and train with the animal like 3 times a week or something, 3 hours a day for your particular needs. And then by the time that you actually get the animal, I think that the animal is a little over a year or something, that it's like kind of ready to go. I mean, when I say ready to go, I'll give you an example because, like I was telling my son Charlie, I said, Charlie, I think it's a great idea, but right now, buddy, I can't barely take care of myself. I said, how can I, get a dog to go outside? And he said, but Dad, these dogs are trained to the point where all you do is open the door. It ain't gonna run off. This dog's it'll go do its business, come right back. And you'll be, I was like, wow, well, come to find out, man, they can go in and flip on lights for you and pick things up. But most importantly for me, it would be one for companionship and for whenever I get anxious moments, and I start getting worked up, that the dog would be able to provide a certain amount of emotional comfort, you know. So I still want to look into that. I'm just kind of holding off for now because I got a few other irons in the fire, and if I go into this detox and then the residential, you're figuring what, a month? Well, 1 month could turn into 6 months. I don't know, but I know one thing: I'll stay in there as long as they let me, because I kind of have this theory, man. And I don't know, but you take someone who's maybe just kind of gotten off path a little, maybe just kind of gotten off one little side in the weeds or something. You know, you get them into 4 weeks of therapy or treatment or whatever. Yeah, okay, fine. Pat them on the ass, they're good to go. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm a guy who is not only, I mean, I've got an addiction issue. My body, I have I have what they call chemical dependency. My body does that. My theory is as long as I've been doing it, and the amount of shit that's out of whack in my life, it might it might be a little more treatment that I need. So a longer stay might be better for me to prevent relapse. I mean, relapse is going to happen with any addiction, no matter who you are, no matter what it is. It could be a drug or gambling or shopping. I mean, it's going to happen. But when it does, to try to understand why it happened, why you did it, and move on. And see, I didn't used to think that way up until 5, 6 years ago. My way of thought was, you know, here's me, here's my goal, and you go straight to it. Do it right the first time, perfection, no matter how long it takes or what it takes to get it done right. And that's it. So in 2018, 2019 ish, when I thought, oh, yeah, I got this, I didn't have it. And what I also thought was, okay, I relapsed. So for me, it wasn't the same uh, mental attitude, but I didn't have the same education either. That to me, automatically that was a failure, because I thought, okay, well, I didn't make it, so you go back to square one. But I had a guy, an older guy in his early 80s. He said to me, he said, Charlie, he said, you got to look at your recovery like a road trip. He says, so you're in Boston, you're in your car, and you're getting ready to head to LA. And between Boston and LA, somewhere in St. Louis, you get turned around because of the traffic, and the signs were wrong, and construction was doing this. And he says, are you going to turn around and go all the way back to fucking Boston? No. He said, you're going to get back on the road when you can, going to LA. He said, so relapses are going to happen. You're going to lose your way. When you find your way back, to educate yourself and understand what happened, and to try to not let that behavior happen again because of some trigger or whatever. That's the learning part of it. And that that made sense to me. So because there's a lot of things in my life I've always looked at as linear, you know, straight to it. Let's do it. And also, I guess, trying to use my best judgment throughout my life. If there was something that I just knew, due to, for whatever reason, wasn't my cup of tea, I wouldn't even try it. So for me, it's always been all or nothing. Either, here's my goal, I'm working towards it, I'm going to get it, or I don't even try it. That when it came to addiction, and to do well for, let's say, a few months, and then to use, once you use, to feel like, okay, now I'm right back where I started, I can't have that frame of mind anymore. I've got to learn that not only addiction, but life sometimes is non-linear. I mean, like the fucking Leonard Skinner, 3 steps. I mean, 1 step forward and 2 steps back in my case sometimes, but that happens, and I've got to accept that. I can't think. I don't. I don't believe that I can continue to think with a linear mind and be able to ever get out of this. I've got to understand that pitfalls are going to be there, things are going to happen, and I can't just automatically call it a failure. I got to call it a learning lesson and move on. And I haven't been doing that.
Well, I've got a few more questions that I'm going to still ask you, but uh, the segment that I'm going to publish that we're recording right now is now going to be just over 2 hours. So I'm going to wrap this one on this final comment and get as much feedback as you care to provide. But I'm not sure if I've told you over the phone or at any time yet, but I wanted to share a few things. 3 individuals uh, that I've heard from over the last few months or the last year, or however long it's been that we've been, I think since January we've been talking. But again, I think I've told you, switched to the liquids dispatch department 7 months ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was in. I was going to say it was right after the first of the year.
It was, I think, in February sometime. But uh, in that role, I reached out to a line haul boat that was coming down with a tank that was hot to trot to destination. I was trying to get my timing into Triangle Fleet to
Oh,
then break it out.
and where
Uh,
was this vessel? In which
uh,
part of the world?
Below Convent on the way into Triangle, I think, or at
Oh, okay. So
Convent.
he was okay. I thought that you meant he was up in St. Paul, trickling his
No,
way down.
just about 30 miles away. So it's coming up to, time to get this barge moving. And early in that conversation over the phone, he stopped me because I said, "Hey, this is, Tim from dispatch." He stopped me and he said, "Is this Tim from the podcast?" I said, "Yes, sir." So we got to talking a little bit, and he told me that his favorite episodes by far have been my visits with you.
Oh my God! What is his name?
That I wish I could remember that. I hope he's out there listening to this and he reaches out to me to remind me because I
Which
didn't write it
company
down.
does he work for? Ingram. He works for
Mhm,
your company.
mhm.
Which boat was it? You
I
remember?
I want to say the John Donnelly, but I'm not sure. I can't
Oh,
remember.
so
It was
okay,
one of the
so it was
line
a
haul.
40 barge boat then. It wasn't
Yeah,
one of the smaller liquid
right,
boats then. Okay.
right. Well, so that happened, and
Yeah.
just last week, another captain that's been on my show before. That's I've been in touch with him since very early on when I started doing this thing. He called me up the other night, and he was actually eager to communicate directly with you via email or cell phone or something. I'm not sure if we ever lined that up, but he reached out, and he has also been most moved or most affected or happy that I'm staying in touch with you, capturing your story. The way you share stories is unlike just about any other guest I've had.
Oh,
The the
quite.
detail, your capacity to recall details from 47 years on Earth is unlike most. I can say that for sure. But
Really? Well, I appreciate you saying that because sometimes I sit there and wonder, man, it makes me feel good because just yesterday, my daughter-in-law, we were texting back and forth, and she said that she was very happy to hear the news about me getting my list on this detox thing. And I responded back, but I told her that she's one of the reasons, she and Charlie. And she told me, she says, I always like reading your writing, Poppy. She says, because you put things into words so well to where I really I feel loved. And I didn't and you've hinted about me writing Stacy, my ex-wife, my son's mother. Last week we were on the phone for a couple brief minutes and she says, Charlie, ever thought about, since your health is kind of shitty and you're kind of holed up in your recliner, start writing a book? So yeah, but I had to find a starting spot but anyway, I appreciate you saying that. And who was that one? The second
Uh,
person.
His name is Kyle Finning. He runs the Mark
Kyle
Twain.
Finning. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, he's got the one page or the one interview, or he's got a couple interviews with you.
He's got one full interview, I think, and a couple of little promotional things that we did. But no, he's the one that wanted to reach out to you directly. And if you're okay with that, I'll forward your information to him.
Sure, go right ahead. Tell
Okay.
tell him tell him to leave a message because I'm like anybody else. If I don't recognize the number, usually I'll think it's a telemarketer. Leave me a message and then I'll program his phone and I'll call him back.
Is text better than a phone call?
Initially, it would be yeah,
Yeah,
just so that hey, this is Kyle from the podcast. Yeah,
sure.
that'd be good. Yeah.
We'll figure that out. But most interestingly, in this point of the conversation, this very day, today, as you mentioned, August 31, 2024, around lunchtime today, I interviewed the director of sales and marketing at Florida Marine.
Hmm.
Okay.
Who would that be?
His episode will publish October 12th. His name's Brian O'Daniels. And
Oh yeah,
I asked him in that conversation, what have been your favorite episodes? Guess what he said?
the ones with Charlie.
Yes, sir.
You're shitting me.
No, sir.
Brian O'Daniel. He's got a boat named after him, or he did.
I think
Florida
so.
Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Well, so there is somebody listening to it. Well, hopefully they get the word to somebody else that maybe we can save a life somewhere. Never know.
Doing what we can, my friend. I do hope so.
Because
Let
at
me,
this point, that's kind of how I feel. And I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like that there's it feels like in my trunk and my torso, man, there's some stuff going on that at times it feels almost irreversible, I guess. But I try to get out of that mindset. But either way, even if it is to know how it was for me playing the part, standing to watch, shining my shoes, tucking in my shirt, being professional, but having an addiction issue and still going to work. Man, a guy doesn't want to do that. And I'm glad that I resigned when I did because, so that's what I would hope. But I understand why people don't, Tim, especially, you're afraid to go to your employer to get help in a job like that because it is safety sensitive. And once you get it documented that you've had any kind of mental health issues, you got to report that to the Coast Guard, you know. So that's another reason why people don't get help. At least I know that's why I didn't for a long time. And with the stigma that is attached still in the medical field, I can see why a lot of people don't try to get treatment because you feel less than because some people, I'm not saying all people, some people make you feel that way. And I didn't think that would really be an issue because I thought that here it is 2024. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, people that are doctors now, surely they can see past all that and from that sense, no, they haven't. They're still acting like fucking 5-year olds, some of them, I think, you know, and that's another reason people don't. So I hope anyone listening, if you know that you're not in control, you're probably not. Don't chance it, man, because I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I'd gotten somebody hurt and knowing I was using. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't have. I would have felt bad. It could have been a pinky finger come off. It don't matter. If you did something under the influence, and if you have any decency about you, you wouldn't be able to sleep right after. I don't think. It's the guy that grabs his briefcase and no problem. That's the guy I'd be worried about. You have someone that has an accident and they're just still happy go lucky. yeah, I might be sleeping with one eye open. Someone that gives a shit that loses sleep when they do something that's not ideal, I'd ride a boat with any day of the week because it shows they're human and that they care about the crew. They care about what they're doing.
Well, one final point came to mind before we wrap up this segment here, but you mentioned that your ex-wife had mentioned to you that maybe you should start writing and that your daughter-in-law appreciates the way you convey things. Interestingly, what came to mind is that's exactly how our relationship began. The
Yeah, right. Yeah,
David Rains episode came out, and I'm sitting at work at Triangle Fleet one day, and I get an email from Captain Kulage. Don't know who this is. And there's a 4 or 5 paragraph message saying, "Hey, look, this is what's going on with me." It was kind of vague, justifiably so. Who you don't know me from anyone, but
sure. Yeah,
you said, "Hey, look, I've got a story, and if nothing else, I can hopefully
show people what not to do.
help people out." And I
Yeah,
really appreciate you reaching out to me and starting this ball rolling. And
yeah,
again,
I
man,
do too, man. I do too, and my family. I say my family, my big sister. I think Charlie, who is anyway. There's been a few people that have mentioned whether or not that they've seen them all, I don't know, but that hey, that's therapeutic for you in a way, isn't it? I said yeah, because it kind of is. It's like on next Friday. I know part of the exam she's going to ask me about the helicopter crash, and I'd rather lick a big old penis than even think about telling that right now. But I'm learning that the more that I do, although it wears me out, it does get a little easier each time. And I didn't think for a minute in my 20s and 30s that something like that, an event like that, just in a one-day event, could cause a person to not rest enough to where everything else just kind of like a domino effect. I mean, that's what has happened to me. And I say that because I used to think it was bullshit when I would watch, a movie or something, and oh, this guy's got PTSD, or this guy that, or someone talking about nightmares. I always thought they were bullshit. I'd be like, oh man, they were just making that up, or how can they be disabled for something going on in their mind? If their arms still work, they can work. That's been my theory. But look at me now. My arms work, and I've not been employed for 5 years. And so I'm glad that I'm not so quick to come to conclusions anymore. I think I take my time a little more now. I'd like to think that maybe it's getting a little seasoned. I don't know, getting wiser possibly. Yeah. So Brian O'Daniels, Kyle, and you're going to find out who the other fella is whenever they watch this.
like I said,
Whoever that was coming down to John Donnelly going to Triangle. Come
if
on, buddy.
if it was, I don't. Again, I'm not sure if it was that boat, but it was one of our big
I
line
wonder if it
hauls.
was the Marty Baskerville. Well, see, actually, I knew guys on all those boats. The OH Ingram, Chad Carter was on. I mean, yeah, there was a whole bunch of guys that I knew, especially after the acquisition from of ACBL buying AEP. There were a lot of guys that kind of dispersed and they went off to Artco or Ingram or wherever. Huh. It's a it's a small world, big river, small world.
If I can get a few folks lined up, do you want to do a kind of a joint roundtable one of these?
Why not?
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm down. Whatever I can do to be part of it, I'll be happy. Yeah. That's what I was telling oh, I didn't tell you this. On the 15th, when I spoke to my psychiatrist and we were talking about the service dogs, you know why he called me is because I thought I had just kind of gotten little warm, fuzzy feeling, maybe like I won a prize or something. But he called me, and what he said was that I've been selected for the Reach Vet program to have some more enhanced care and possibly more communication. Would you be okay with that? I said, sure, doc. What do you mean, like a phone call? He goes, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, a phone call from anyone. Yeah, that'd be nice. Talk to somebody here and there. He said, okay. So we went on and on, talked about service dogs. Well, a couple of days later, I'm looking online because anytime that you have an encounter with a provider, within 36 hours, their notes are able for the veteran to view. Come to find out, this Reach Vet program, it's something that was started back in 2017, but it's an algorithm thing, and what it is they look at several factors, including occupational factors, psychosocial, and age, substance abuse, yada 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 yada. And once a month, throughout, I guess, nationwide, each major VA facility, they take a percentage. But anyway, it's 0.1% that shoots back the names from this algorithm are the highest risk statistically for suicide. That's why he called. That's why I'm supposedly going to get enhanced care, is because I am at the highest risk possible for suicide. In my opinion, I'm not, simply because I no longer have firearms. And I don't know, but I do appreciate them having that in place, because I don't know if I've told you, I think I have, but 22 a day. That's the average number. On average, 22 veterans a day take their own lives. That's like one every 65 minutes or something. And that's devastating, man. It's and not all, but most of them are male, have had substance abuse issues, are alone, and are homeless or about to become homeless when they kill themselves. And call me insensitive, but as sad as that is to know, in some ways, because of what I'm going through, I don't blame the guys that have, because the VA or even the private sector medically, they can all say, oh, well, we want to get you into treatment and help you out or whatever and keep you sober. They can do that all that they want and help you in that fashion. But at the end of the day, is that gonna bring his home back or his wife back? Or no? I mean, you're still back at square one, and that's my problem. I'd like a little. I don't know. I don't know where to start. I have no idea, and I don't know if that's good or bad. But I don't. That's what I need help with. I need help to know what should I do next, man. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old and I have no skills other than navigation, and can't do that.
Well,
So,
if I may offer a place to start, I think detox and recovery is a great one.
yeah. Well, and like you said earlier, recovery too. When I think of recovery, I don't think of just abstinence. I mean, I'm talking about better quality of life. So I hope I can get some of that. I'm glad that they're willing to make an exception, because they normally don't detox people that are involved with the things I'm involved with. And I'm glad that they're making an exception for it, because I mean that in itself, to me, if I'd say no, well, that'd be dumb to not accept that. I mean, because that's been a major issue for me, is the detox process, because it's painful. It really is. I mean, it really hurts when you're chemically dependent on something, because in your mind you might say, "Yeah, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to attack this and put her down." But your body says, "Hey, whoa, whoa, son of a bitch. We've done changed so many things morphologically and cells and everything else that you got to do something." And that's true, by the way. I mean, mitochondrial dysfunction, um, the oxidative process of aging, all those things play a factor. And when they change cells, when a chemical changes your cells, in some cases it changes them and morphs them indefinitely. Some of them it kills, some of the cells. So you got to find a new starting place and realize, I think I've got to realize I'm not going to ever be the person that I was. I'm not going to have that life I did. I got to just put that behind me and realize it's history, because if I strive for that, for one thing, I don't think it's possible. But secondly, I think that would be kind of wrong, because there was something off with the old guy that caused him to get to this point. So I've got to make a new guy. I got to discover something else, that I haven't yet, for me.